C.J. Graham, Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th, Part 6. You're watching Death vs. Society. I was running a nightclub in Los Angeles, true story. Thursday nights I had a hypnotist. And we had a good full house, but the hypnotist wanted to have it recorded. He was going to edit it down for a promotional video so he could get jobs maybe in Las Vegas on the Strip. It just happened the night he did it, the company came in called Real Effects. Did all the special effects and was shooting the camera. Well, it happened to be the company that did Part 4 with Ted White. And they suggested to the hypnotist, hey, why don't we do a Jason thing? Come through the screen and scare the subjects. Well, my big ass, being the general manager of the nightclub, was like, well, we'll use CJ because he'll fit in the wardrobe from Ted White. And when I say this, the rest is history. It really is. I mean, I came through the screen, scared the subjects. Everybody's like, and the people that did the special effects were like, damn, we're going to cast you for Jason next time. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I mean that, yeah, whatever. A few months later, I got a phone call to go down and meet Frank Mancuso Jr. and Tom McLaughlin and everybody involved. And really, the rest is history. I mean, sincerely, I'm here 35 years later talking to you guys about wearing a hockey mask, not saying a friggin' word, and killing people. I mean, it truly is a lucky story.
I mean, you were the first Jason to kill Sweat Hog.
Yeah, when you think about it, I think Part 6, in my opinion, is the beginning where Jason becomes the principal in the movie. Now everybody wants to see Jason. Before that, it was all about the camp counselors. It was about what was going on. But then all of a sudden, I think in Part 6, if you take a look at it, Jason becomes the principal, meaning everybody wants to see what Jason's going to do next, I will tell you an interesting thing about Part 6, and again, it's an opinion. It's like an ass. Everybody has one, right? It's an opinion. I have the opening like James Bond. Kind of cool, right? I get to come back to life like Frankenstein. Kind of cool, right? I get to have a rock and roll Hall of Famer do the music, Alice Cooper. Kind of cool. And I'm the only Jason to wear a Batman utility belt. You ever thought about that? True. So, I have a little bit of a flavor towards it, but at the same time, for those of you that are younger, we had this conversation, there's no nudity. There's maybe 3 or 4 four-letter words, and that's about it. And there's a little bit of humor in it. Kind of like an Abbott Costello. For those of you that know who they are, go back and look. Universal movies, Abbott Costello were like the Three Stooges, being chased by Frankenstein. A little bit of humor in it. So I think I was very fortunate to be in a part that's carried on so far. And Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director, who's an amazing individual, he just had this, how he wanted it to be shot with a little bit of humor. And I still remember sitting next to him in panels like this and him saying the promise he made to Frank Mancuso Jr. was that he wouldn't make fun of Jason. And I don't think he did. Jason had some looks and some attitudes about him that were a little humorous, but at the same time, he was badass.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, that's one of the main points I thought about watching this movie again. I don't know if anybody in here watches Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. They were doing the Hatchet series. Well, not the Hatchet series. They watched Victor Crowley and had Adam Green on. And one of the big things he talked about was he wanted to make a really fun horror movie because horror movies don't have to be dark and grim and scary from the very beginning. The movie can be fun as long as the villain isn't. The villain still needs to be scary. Still needs to be violent. And I think this is maybe I don't want to say it was directly what made him make this movie, but I feel like it had a lot of impact on future horror movies, especially slashers, because it was fun. But Jason was not. Jason was scary.
Right. And Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director, he's got this sick sense of humor about the way he does things. It's like the scene with the caretaker. Some people have a strange sense of entertainment. Remember that? And it is. You may not realize when you go back and look at some of these older films, be they, you guys know Michael Myers, Halloween? And I just want to go on the record. We're recording this, right? I want to go on the record. Real men use a machete, not an Outback steak knife. Right? I'm talking to you, Mikey. So I just want to bring that out. But my point is, you look at all of us wearing these masks, and it's crazy because the four of us, which I consider the four musketeers, you got Robert, Freddy, you got Michael Myers, you got Jason, and of course you got Leatherface, four musketeers. And like I tell people, we're all related. We came from the same mother, we're just different brothers. And the four of us are nuts, if you've ever talked to any of us. I think the cool thing about it, from my personal experiences, I've met all these men that are involved in these films, and they're all really fun. They're great. I'm not just talking about Jason, Andrew, who was just in here. I mean, what a character.
Ooh.
And if you start making, and you meet RJ, another person that played Leatherface, and you start going through Tony and the different people that played Michael Myers, there's some really cool people out there you get to meet. And they all have their own persona that they brought to the film. Ken, who was in Freddy vs. Jason, the man is 6'6". 6'6". I mean, I'm 6'3", 6'4". That man is huge. And then I didn't know this till he told me in a panel that they had him in a 2-inch platform. He made the dude 6'8". I mean, can you think of how that looks, 6'8" versus Tom Cruise size, Robert? And then you've all met Kane Hodder, of course. And, I give Kane part 7, 8, 9, 10 kudos because he's been such a huge ambassador for the Friday the 13th series. Everybody knows Kane. And he's kind of paved the way that here I am sitting here talking to you, and you're curious about who's the other people that played Jason. You may not know this, and I like to really bring it up about everybody. Ted White. Ted White played Jason in part 4. True story. Ted White doesn't have credits, didn't want credits in the film. Ted White is in his 90s now, just so you know. And, he was a double stuntman for people like John Wayne. He comes from that Cary Grant era. When he did a show, when last time I saw him was a few years ago, that man walks in with slacks, a sports jacket, and a nice shirt. And it reminds you of the 60s and the 70s era of a gentleman walking in at 6'4". Just stout as can be. And you may or may not know this, Marlboro Man back in the 70s. Ted White, so you think of. He's got that cowboy look. Just a great man. So it's interesting. Ari, Jason in part 1, he was a kid. And he's a musician now. He can play any music you can think of. They're just all very talented people.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of people who play these. Like I said, I really like what you brought to the role. And like you said, there's a lot of people playing. Caden kind of brought in a lot of what everybody else brought to the role. One of the things that I like about 6, though, is at some points, and anybody that likes this movie more than this movie, I mean, we could argue about it until the end of the day, but I feel like Jason 6 is kind of the last Jason movie, true Jason movie. In part 7, you got telekinesis.
You tell Kane Hodder that.
I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to tell
Kane,
him.
he didn't mean it, bro.
This is what I feel. You got in space, you got on a boat. So this is the last one where Jason is truly in his element at the camp, just doing what he does. And that's always made a really important part of the series to me. Did you kind of feel that when you saw the latter movies?
I'll take the Fifth Amendment.
Fair enough. I know you're from
For those of you that don't pay attention, and that's I refuse to answer on the grounds it may incriminate me. The Fifth Amendment. Okay, obviously you've all never been in jail. Anyway, moving on. You gotta remember a few things about the courtroom, okay? That's one of them.
Also, I love that Jason was threatened with what might be the world's smallest handgun in existence. Those two campers that were in the VW Buck, he pops out like he's this big man on campus and literally pulls the world's smallest revolver I've ever seen. Like, I don't even know what bullets would come out of that. BBs maybe? Like, what's that going to do?
He's waiting for me to answer.
Even
a 38 special, okay?
Even if it wasn't Jason.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like a little bit. When you look at the Volkswagen, not too big weapons going to fit in it.
That's true.
And if you think about it, in those days, a 38 was pretty much just a little stuff that cops used or carried on their ankle, little ones. So that was very popular back then compared to today where everybody's got a 9mm or something. But I think at the same time, that was part of the corny humor part. All of a sudden, they're pulling out this little cap and going to shoot Jason, and Jason, spears the tire and flips the guy out over the top. You may or may not know this, but have you ever seen Tom Cruise, the movie with the captain and stuff where he goes overseas, Samurai?
Mhm.
Do you remember that gentleman from that movie? Do you remember the captain at the very end that wanted to shoot? That's him,
Tony Gwynn?
Tony. So you go back and start looking that's Tony. So that's just shows you how people's careers migrated. He's done other things, obviously, than just that, directing and stuff. But if you start looking at those, you can see how people have migrated. It's no different than if you look at Highway to Hell that I did with Hellcop, everybody from Christy Swanson to Chad Lowe, Rob Lowe's younger brother.
Mhm.
Both sides of the camera they've done. And Patrick Virgin was in it, who played Sleeping with the Enemy opposite of Julia Roberts. But you start looking at these people, a lot of people did a horror movie or a B movie in their early stages of their career as part of their work to develop tape on themselves so they can promote themselves for other opportunities. So you kind of look at B movies, but a lot of people started in B movies. A lot of people.
I'm glad you brought up Highway to Hell. It's such a fun movie. Obviously, it's not talked about near as much as the Friday movies, but Highway to Hell is such a fun movie. And yeah, Christy Swanson, how cute was she? My goodness.
Well, the Highway to Hell film that we did, it never made a national distribution. It was set for a national distribution, I think in '90, and unfortunately, Hemdale bankruptcy. So the distribution didn't proceed, and then it sat on the shelves, the library it's called, and then until MGM and United Artists bought the library, and in the last couple of years, it's been out on DVD. I think it's Blu-ray. But it didn't get the recognition. Again, you look at Chad Lowe, who's done a lot of things. Christy, Buffy and the Vampire, the original, and you look at Christy's career, which is significant over the years. And then you go back and start looking. For those of you who remember Rock and Roll, Lita Ford, she had a part in it and stuff. And if you go through and look at it, there's a lot of different people. The original Predator is in it. He has a part where his eyes are sewn up, and he's taken the people across the bridge to hell. So there are a lot of characters in it that have done film over the years, but unfortunately didn't make a distribution.
Yeah, the Stillers, all of them.
All the
So many
Stillers are in it,
Stillers.
including the sister, Ben Stiller. He's got about 9 seconds in it. I kick his ass. What's he make now? About 25 million a movie. How'd that work out, CJ? But his mom and dad, wonderful people, were in it, and his sister was in it. So that's kind of interesting. You go back, so you start looking at these different roles that a lot of these folks have had, and then their successes. It's not always good to start at the top because sometimes you're going to go down. But you look at folks that start in the middle somewhere. Look at how Ben has done successfully with his career.
Which makeup was more painstaking to go through, Hellcop or Jason?
Hellcop took about 5 hours. A gentleman named Steve Johnson, very well known in the industry, did the makeup for that. And this is when, for those of you who remember MTV, was coming out. I'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, be sitting in a chair watching MTV videos, falling asleep while they glued my face on. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, there'd be a call. And then, of course, for those of you that know, just because your call's at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean you're going to shoot until 11 or 12 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can imagine the sweaty feeling you have right now. I had that on my face all day because you got all this prosthetics glued, and then you can't eat lunchtime because your lips are all glued together, and you start eating the hamburger, so it starts falling off. So you got a straw, and they give you protein drinks, to keep you going throughout the day. So, but I will say that Highway to Hell again, like I said, Steve Johnson was kind of the person behind that. And then, of course, Real Effects, Christopher Swift, and Mr. Forsha, who were the people that did all the Jason stuff for me.
Okay, probably open it up to some questions out here. Anybody has it?
So I've heard other people quote, like other Jason's quote, that you are kind of like a fraternal brotherhood. And since Steve passed, besides Ari, who would be the most outspoken?
Outspoken?
Because Steve was very straightforward.
I don't think any of them were outspoken. I think Steve was really the mouth of the unit. We would sit with Steve, and I'm telling you right now, every other word would be F you, F that, F you, wow, F that. If I'd have known that I was going to be so successful, none of you guys would have had this job. I'd have done them all.
Yeah.
So I think Steve was, when he passed, I think it was 74. good-looking guy, full of spunk. I really don't think anybody's outspoken. Ari isn't that he's outspoken, he's a musician. And I'm telling you right now, you put a piano in front of him or a guitar, it's entertaining, because he's really good. Kane and I are pretty quiet, Ken's quiet. Derek Mears, I would say, would be the most uniquely talented. And the reason I say that is he loves to do improv. Him and his buddies in LA, always doing improv. Sometimes I see some of the things they put on podcasts that he does. So he's a different, unique type of talent. And you may or may not know, but Derek has done so many different projects where he's played so many different characters in wardrobes that a lot of times you don't even know it's him. But when you hear he's done so much, so he's a little different. Kane has got a very long resume between Hatchet, which he's done very well with that series, and then of course the Friday the 13th. Now the person that's probably done the most, and I may be wrong, but I think it would be Ted White's probably done over 100 movies if I remember correctly.
I couldn't believe when we took the picture, like I said, with all the Jasons when we were speaking, how like Ted was still there, like being 93, and he just, I remember he put his arm on her back and whatever, and was straight crack that person, put his machete up to her, and it was like, he was still.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Ted White, again, I've had the pleasure of sitting on panels, so I'm just kind of regurgitating what he said, is, he really didn't want to do it. His kids said, oh, you need to do it, it's not a big deal. He chose not to be on the credits, and today, here he is 90-something, and everybody knows him because he played Jason. Yeah. They don't know the other 99 movies he did with all these huge legends. Yeah. It's Jason. So it's kind of weird.
Anybody else?
You were not an actor before you were cast as Jason in Part 6. Do you think not being an actor had any benefits to you playing that role?
Well, I guess define the word actor. I look at stage actors as being a completely different drama than actors on a movie.
Okay.
Those are some very hard-working, different, talented people, but I think every day is an act. Sitting here is an act. Not telling you to F off is an act. So you kind of look at boundaries, so to speak, respectful boundaries. So when they put a hockey mask on me, I got to flip a switch and F people up. I got to kill 18 people, I didn't go to jail. I think the acting concept is something that some people really are talented. I personally, for the last 25 years, have been a general manager, chief operating officer of casino, hotel resorts. So I wore a suit and tie every day. Most people don't even know I had tattoos. A few people knew I played Jason, but other than that, they just saw the suit and tie walking by. But that isn't who I am. That's who I was when I was acting, like 8-10 hours a day. But as a person, I think it's misleading when you look at somebody because she's got, is it pink? Red? Red hair, okay. $5, probably smarter than me, to be fair. But I think the acting concept is just, I think people act all the time, hopefully in a good way, to be quite honest, rather than being I always say that leadership, and I mean this because I used to tell my executives, leadership is difficult, it's hard, it takes time. Dictatorship is easy because anybody can be a dick. Is that fair? So I think that's, when I look at the acting concept, I think some people are very good about it, very passionate. And I do think that a lot of people get into their characters because it's so natural. Well, standing there as a big ass in a hockey mask, kind of natural. And you may think, well, God, you didn't say anything. How hard can that be?
No.
Y'all thinking, aren't you?
No.
But I challenge you, I mean this respectfully. I want you to really stand up in front of the mirror one day, put a hockey mask on, seriously. And I want you to show anger to the reflection. I want you to show curiosity to the reflection. I want you to be nice to the reflection, but you can't say anything.
Yeah.
Think about that. You can't say anything. Don't forget, I want you to look like this because you only got one eye, and I can't see this hand at all over here, over here. So this is all you're seeing. And then show me what acting is all about. It's a little bit entertaining when you're on the inside, but it's hard. To show anger. Kane, I give him a hard time, and I love him dearly, but I laugh at him because, his first scene that he did in Part 7 when he shows anger, Remember that? You see him pumping his lats out. I said, Kane, he's dead. What are you doing breathing? That's what I told him. He's dead. What are you doing breathing? He had no choice. After that, he does it in all of them, you know, because he committed. So it is challenging to show anger, fear, curiosity without speaking. Because I consider, I get your attention real fast. Look at this girl, she just pooped. Are you okay? I'm sorry. But see what I'm saying? Everybody's like, good point. But it is, I mean, I remember one time somebody asked that question, it was me and Kane. I love cute. I like to pick on him because I love him. We were sitting at the end of the table and I hit the table so hard, scared the shit out of Kane. He was sitting next to me on the stage. It's tough to show anger without showing hostility, your forehead, you know, and your eyes, and, you know, so I guess it's defined in the individual. You know, I could be wrong, but
Okay.
I think it's an individual decision. Who else got a question? I'll run this meeting. Hey, by the way, the two of you in the back, yeah, you two, you were late. How come?
We didn't, like, it says 5, it said it started at 5.
Okay, well, you don't, you didn't learn to be 15 minutes early? You were never in the military, I take it. Yeah, you always gotta be 15 minutes early to everything. All right, I was just helping you out here. Job interview could have been over by now.
You're
All right?
right.
Now everybody's going, okay. He's looking at me going, good point though. He's like, I'm in it, I'm on it.
Life lessons from CJ Grant.
Hey, Jason, you know, you gotta live to be old like me. For those of you who don't know, I am 63, so it's like, you know, you gotta enjoy life a little bit. All right, so, who else? Yes, sir.
So, Vengeance.
Yes.
Are you surprised about how much it picked off and got the following they did?
You know, for those of you who don't know, a year ago somebody asked me to participate in a fan film. And they wanted me to play Elias Voorhees. If you guys know the story a little bit in the movie, or excuse me, in the comics, they talked about Jason's father. And he's never really been part of anything. They asked me if I played Jason's father. So I grew a beard for 3 or 4 months. And they put a long, strangly wig on me, so I look like, you know, no disrespect, an Okie from Postokie. And I mean, it's a pretty cool part, to be honest. And I square off with my son, just like any father and son would be, you know, telling him to kill somebody. He's not sure if he wants to do it. I was surprised, you know, I mean, I did it. What pay they were giving myself and Steve Dash, we donated to the Shriners Children's Hospital. We didn't even see a paycheck, it went to them, and that was just our way of saying, you know, saying thank you. I was surprised about the motion it got. And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because that's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's not my place. I wasn't high on the amount of nudity they had to put into it to make it effective. It's an opinion. I mean, you know, but I thought overall it was kind of interesting for what they did. They've asked me if I would participate next year in Friday the 13th Bloodline, because they want to bring Elias back in a higher role of a character. I've told them I'll look at it. Let's talk about it next year when things normalize, hopefully. But I think it's interesting, the conception of how Jason's father is now part of the killing spree in the camp along with Jason. I thought that was cool. There's the very end of the scene, which I'm not going to tell you, but Jason kind of tries to whack Daddy, and then Daddy's, when they look back, is gone. Kind of like the Jason syndrome, you know, he's down, and now where'd he go? So we can see about next year. I think it's an interesting opportunity. Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director, has mentioned in the last year that he's written a new script. He'd like to get it in front of Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Miller if they can come to terms on decisions. He's asked me if I felt that I had the physicality, I would participate playing Jason. My response would be twofold. If it was a cool script, because I ain't going to space. I just ain't doing it, I'm telling you. If the script was cool, and if I could deliver a performance as good or better than Part 6, I would entertain it. But if I couldn't deliver to the fans as good or better, I wouldn't do it, because I don't want to be that football player that comes back after 5 seasons because of a paycheck and doesn't perform as expected, because I'm letting myself down. But Tom has put together, he's talked about it, he wants to shoot Camp Crystal Lake in the snow.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of cool.
Right.
You know, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, that's interesting, because the camp is closed. My understanding is they're all going to a ski resort, and something breaks down, so they get stranded at the camp. Now you're killing these kids through the ice and the snow, which I think Tom's position is the red would look so cool in the snow. So, you know, it might have merit. It might have a little freaky attitude to it, but we'll see what he can do with that. I mean, again, Mr. Miller and Mr. Cunningham have to come to terms on whatever, who owns what.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess if I understand the correctness of it. Even though one has won and one has appealed and won, it's kind of just going back and forth.
Do you have any hope of it ever ending?
What's that?
Do you have any hope of it ever ending?
Well, you know, let me tell you from a business perspective. Obviously, running, you know, billion-dollar casinos, I have a business attitude about it. I look at it monetarily. If it were me, I'd put 10 million into it, shoot the film, put everything into a trust, which would be a close $100 million now, tomorrow. And when you guys do decide, whatever the court decision is, divide the 100 million. You know, maybe if you have 100 million in the bank, you might say, hey, let's just split this one 50-50, and we'll continue to fight. You know what I'm saying? Because money talks, right? You know, but I'm a business person. I look at it objectively. I mean, you're making no money with it now, and it's been 10 years. And to be fair, the only reason I'm sitting here is because of you. The only reason they made money is because of you. So there's going to come a point when you turn your back to them because they're not delivering a product to you. You can tell they're a business, huh? So objectively, I hope they come to terms or at least consider what I'm saying. Put it together, put it out there, put it in the bank in a trust. When y'all done fighting, decide how much you want. You know, but I think if, and I'm confident we'll make 100 million, aren't we all?
Yeah.
There's another Halloween ready to go.
For sure.
And I think they might come to terms, at least for one movie, to say, hey, you know what, we just put this 50-50 and we'll continue to fight for the next 20 years or until one of us passes. You know, so we'll see what happens. I mean, again, that's a general manager talking. You know, that's not an actor. So we'll see what happens.
I was just going to say.
You have to go to the bathroom? Go ahead.
No, you might want to talk to Jason Brooks because I think he's already advertising that you're attached to Bloodline.
Yeah, well, let me put the word attached. I have agreed
Okay.
in principle to review options in 2021.
Okay.
How do you want to interpret
Okay. I just.
that? I'm saying, how do you want to interpret that? That's what I texted him, to be exact.
Okay.
So, for those of you that understand a business, you always look at options, you never pass the options, but if you commit, you put it into a contract.
Right.
I am still at this point where in 2021, let's review options, sounds good, and we'll see what that option is of what you're willing to put forth.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. I just
gotta
wanted to make
be
sure
fair.
you knew about
If
that.
it were me, I personally wouldn't matter either way, because I think, you know, the character itself is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And since you can change Jason, you can probably change Elias too.
Okay.
I think the spinoff for Elias is that it was me. You know, me squaring off with me. So to speak.
Yeah.
You know, I had that little twist.
Definitely helped.
I think so. So we'll see, you know, I'm interested, let's review options in 2021, and let's go from there.
Okay.
Is that fair?
It wasn't necessarily a question. I just wanted to make
Okay.
sure that you
Clarity.
knew he was talking about it.
It's clarity. So, all right, who's got a question? I know y'all thinking. Nobody?
Is it satisfying to punch the heart through out of somebody's chest?
Well, it's satisfying to kill 18 people and not go to jail, if that's what you're asking.
Imagine that.
Horse shack. You know, the unfortunate thing about the horse shack scene is back in the 80s, compared to today, you weren't allowed to show as much blood and guts as today. Even a bra and panty was a little risque back then. I think the cool part is, you don't know this, but in those days when they cut tape and edited, it hit the floor. It's not like today where it's digital. And once it hit the floor, it would sweep it up like that, it's gone. If they could do a director's cut today on all the tape that went in the garbage, it'd be pretty badass. Because Tom McLaughlin had some really great shots with the heart beating and blood popping out of it, you know, as part of it. When it came down to being an X-rated movie at those days, they had to take it out. So you don't get to see some of the kills as gross as they were back then. And it is too bad because it wasn't put into digital format because we really didn't even have that. So I think it's interesting to look at it and say, hey, that was fun. But I will tell you, the whole film to me was intriguing. A question I get, maybe I'll throw it out there for you, is a lot of people ask me what's my favorite scene. And honestly, my favorite scene was my first scene. My very, very first scene. And you gotta remember, they don't shoot films in sequence. So my very first scene was where Jason's profile steps in and you see the mobile home behind it rocking, and he turns and starts walking towards it. That was my very first scene. All right, so to me, that's my favorite scene, because all of a sudden, okay, this is ready, action. You know, and I'm off and running, so I always think of that as the coolest, because not being in a film up to that moment, that's cool to me. You know, that's cool to me. So, I think one of the questions a lot of people ask also, they kind of ask, again, what's my favorite? I always give them that, well, is there others? I think one of the questions a lot of people ask is the stunt work. You may or may not know this. I didn't realize people didn't know this when I was doing a panel with Kane and Tom and Steve Dash one time, and they started asking each of us about our background in stunts and where they had been schooled. I'd never done a stunt in my life up to that film. So when you see me being burned and put on chains and 20 feet underwater, breathing off regulators and going through doors, etc., I'd never done that before in my life. That was my first time. That was just me trying to get badass. That was me going through a door and hoping I didn't step on a piece of the wood and fall. That's me crashing through a wall and stepping down a foot and making sure that I didn't tumble into the camera or cost us another $25,000 to set up the shot because I fell. I'd never done stunts before. And when Kane found that, he looked at me like I was out of my mind. Because most people had been trained or been through stunt school. I never did it. I didn't even, again, it wasn't my aspiration to be an actor or a stuntman. It just kind of, I got lucky. I'm not gonna lie, I got lucky. You know, however, when you ask me to do a job, I'm gonna do it. You know, I'm not gonna fake it out, but I'll do the best of my abilities.
Were there any that you were nervous about? Because I know like the scene with Court in the RV, you have a real knife figure, and then
You know, it's interesting because I wasn't ever nervous at all. Like, you know, I wasn't cocky, but I wasn't ever nervous. It's like taking Darcy, and she, you know, we had that fight scene in the bathroom, and we had a fight scene. They put up this mock bathroom, and she just kicked the shit out of me. I mean, physically, she was fighting and kicking and, you know, bluffing. And I've got a hold of her, like, so she can't get away from me and I don't get hurt. But near the end of it, the scene that you may or not know, they put a camera, let's just say right here. Then you see my hands, her face, and throw it to the camera. Well, this young lady's giving me her head and having trust in me, without a mask on, of course, to throw her face into this camera as close as I can to stop. So I look at those, including Court, taking a real knife and going like this and stopping. And then they do the reverse with the fake knife. They had a lot of trust in me. And I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't deserve it, but that was pretty ballsy of them, you know, that they would trust me that. So I never had any concerns. There's a scene I always laugh, and I mean it respectfully, of course. It's like, you know, the scene where you see the slippers come off Sissy. She comes flying out the window, right? Well, they kept trying to figure out, well, how are we going to shoot this scene? How do we rig her come out? Because they want the feet to go and the shoes to be left behind. And I'm standing outside the window looking at everybody, and I'm just going, oh, you know, I don't know this young lady. I've met her for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, well, and I asked her, I said, are you okay if I put my hand in your crotch? I mean that respectfully, because you're wearing gloves. And she's like, that's fine. And they go, well, I'm pretty sure I could pick her up. I mean, she's the size of a fruit, you know, this big. So, you know, I put my hand just like that. And like this, she put her hand on my shoulders because the scene was going down from behind. When they say action, I physically pulled her out of a window, you know, just, hi. And I mean that respectfully because everything is professional, but you kind of look at it going, well, I mean, I don't know you, but if you're okay, because you want to be respectful to the, I mean, I don't know this lady. And she was so cool about it. She goes, yeah, we're fine. We pulled her right out of the window, you know, boom. I mean, you got to improvise sometimes. I mean, I don't know. To me, it was just like, I can probably lift you up if you're okay with that. It just, they were going to put a rigging on her and a belt on her and a harness on her and all this shit. I'm thinking, maybe, what do you weigh, like $105, $110? And, you know, so we got it done. It was a great scene, though. It's those shoes come off and all you see is the slippers, and then you see our head get twisted off outside the window. How cool is that? So.
Do you have a favorite of your 18 kills?
You know, my favorite, the reason I say that, my favorite's breaking the sheriff's back. The reason I like that one, and I always tell my friend Kane Hodder likes the sleep bag kill. The reason I like it is of similarity. There's no blood, there's no guts. It's just physical force.
And
Can
sound.
you imagine just, well, don't get me started. Don't get started. I mean, just think about the force of the power it would take. That's kind of scary. You know, if you're the receiving end of that shit. So,
Was it kind of cathartic being able to put on that mask and do those things and pretend, but like you said, you kind of had to get into a mind space?
well, the interesting thing going back to '86, Jason wasn't the empowering individual he is today. When you talk about Jason, it was a little different. I mean, I mean this, I'm so fortunate because I can go to India right now. What is India, like 1.4 billion? And I can show them a picture of Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, everybody knows it. I show them a picture of CJ.
Who?
What? But if I flip the picture over to a picture of Jason hockey mask, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so notarized now. You know, and you think of Top Gun came out the same year, 86. So you kind of think about it, you go, wow, and people are so, everybody knows Tom. You know, everybody doesn't know Kane or Ken or CJ, but if you show them the hockey mask and say Friday the 13th, oh yeah. You know, so back then it wasn't the same thing as it is today. So now that it's just become an evolution of what it is, it's kind of humbling, most importantly, and appreciative. Like I said, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the fans in this room right now. So I always say thank you, and I always mean that humbly because, you know, again, what makes everything great is the fans in front of me. You know, I got lucky, but I get to be here because of that.
Any other questions, anybody else?
I got more. All right. The lawsuit was touched on earlier, or you mentioned, you kind of touched on it earlier. I know you probably don't want to personally answer this question, so I'm not going to ask you what you think about how the lawsuit should.
This is a political question. I can see it coming right now.
No. I'm not going to ask.
He's already hit this.
I'm not going to ask you how you personally feel, but if Jason Voorhees was in a room with Victor Miller and Sean Cunningham, which one of them would he kill first to get this over with?
Well, it's probably they're both going to have to die to get it over with, so I guess you have to kill them both. I mean, double whammy. I don't know the answer because I don't know the legalities of it. I do understand, and I can tell you what I hear, and what I understand that each has technically a right to the script and to the concept. How that's played out, you know, I'm not a lawyer, you know, I'm more
Right.
common sense. I have a PhD in common sense. Common sense tells me, let's shoot a movie, get it out, to put the money in the bank and find out later.
It's crazy.
That's me. That's using common sense, and I think that's made me successful running casino resorts. I don't know the details. I think probably my guess would be some of it's personal. And sometimes we get personal, we stop thinking logically. But I don't know if Jason, I think it'd be a problem for Jason because Jason is split between both daddies, if you think about it.
Mhm.
So I'm going to come back here to a PC, a politically correct answer. If I was looking at both my daddies, I'd have a problem unless I could take them both out at the same time.
Hey, you took 3 heads off.
That's, what?
You took 3 heads off.
My name is CJ Graham and I approve that message. I'm gonna run for something, I don't know what. I got this down to my name and I approve this message. But I've met them both. I've been on panels with Mr. Cunningham and Mr. Miller. You know, they're extremely bright people. I think they're blessed that they got to do something of this magnitude. And again, I don't know the behind the scenes. It's like some people just, it becomes personal. I get it. That makes sense. I mean, I try to maintain a very neutral position, not a political, neutral position. I mean, there's compromise everywhere to get to the middle. You know, I mean, I've worked with unions and I've worked with having 2,500 employees, so I get both sides of the table when I'm
Right.
sitting there. It's never going to be perfect, straightforward, never going to be perfect. But let's do the best to kind of get where we can.
Fair enough.
Do you know if there's any truth to LeBron James trying to get the franchise?
I heard that rumor, don't know the answer to the question though. And I probably know as much as you, I heard that. I mean, I think anybody could afford to buy the franchise, but again, my question is, let's just say you buy the franchise for $50 million. Well, why? We can, for $10 million, we can make one and put $100 million in the bank right now. So I don't know, but you know, that's just me talking, I don't know. I will tell you it would be a great investment for anybody to even come up and say, hey, I'll spend $10 million to do 3. I want to hire the same Jason so we have continuity, 1, 2, 3. We'll shoot all 3 sequentially in a row. All right, get it down, and then we'll shelve 2 of them, put 1 out, we'll bank all the money. 18 months, we'll put another one out, 18 now. eventually the lawsuits will be over. Whatever is in the bank, which could be upwards of $500 million at a time, we'll split it equally based on the legalities, or we'll just whoever wins. But I think that would be fair for the fans. And to me, I look at it as an investment going forward. I look at things in more of a 3 and a 5 and a 10-year plan, rather than just this week, if that makes sense.
I like the way you think.
I appreciate that. You know, I worked with a lot of, like I said, 2,500 employees at one time, and it wasn't a perfect solution no matter what we did, but when we came to, I'll give you an example, we came to giving our employees raises after 2008 when everything froze. I let the employees make the decision and vote on something, which most people would think that's crazy. My decision for them is, do you guys want to do merit raises? Merit. Everybody knows what a merit is based on your performance.
Right.
Merit raises 3 to 5%, or you guys want to do across the board 3% for everybody? Vote. They decided they wanted merit raises because he knew he was going to get the 5% because he works his ass off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you're on the coattail getting your 2%. You see what I'm saying? So, but he knew he'd work his ass off.
Well, don't pick on me.
Because you can't afford sleep.
No, they're just rolled up. It's freaking hot in here,
You can't
man.
afford sleeves, dude. You're already on a budget, I can tell. So I just always, you know, I let the employees make, and they voted, they want merit raises based on their performance individually, which I said, that's fine. So the vice presidents and directors were allowed to make decisions, but they had to back it with paperwork. You can't just say Susie doesn't get 4% or 3% or 2%, because there's got to be, you know, something on the backside to prove it. So, I mean, I've always kind of looked at things a little differently than most. Like I said, you know, I really do. I have a high school diploma. That's it, with my honorable discharge from the military, right next to my PhD in common sense, right? So there is some common sense, and you'd be surprised if you listen to people what you can learn.
And you probably know this. Some of the dumbest people I know have college degrees.
You know, and with all due respect, I'm smart enough to know I hired some very smart people too. I mean, I hired people that worked with me that had MBAs in finance and bachelors and this and that, CPAs, CFOs, but I'll tell you, when it came down to sitting down and numbers and negotiations and trying to find a compromise, they just looked at me and said, I ain't gonna challenge it, you know, because I really understood the genetics of how we can get somewhere. So, but if he works really super hard, why shouldn't he get 5% a year? And if Susie, no disrespect, I'm just saying you, is doing the job sufficiently, and the job starts at $15 an hour, then it is what it is. You know, and if Susie wants to move up to a promotional level, making 17 another position, you should promote from within and allow Susie to make that decision. Mm-hmm. Rather than keep Susie hostage to BS.
Right.
Because when I started in the casino industry, I started as a dealer dealing cards. First I started in security, then I started dealing cards, then I became a supervisor, a pit boss, a casino manager, and all the way up the ranks. And not because I had any college degrees, I just had my PhD in common sense. So, and I don't want to hear that you didn't have a dad, because my dad died when I was 3, so I don't want to hear that story either. Work your ass off and make it happen. Period. So, anybody else want a life lesson? But I always say this, I've been very fortunate and very lucky. You know, I made choices, and I always took a challenge to get promoted. I even leave one company, go to another company, because I believed in myself. So that's important. I mean, I got to be fair. I was lucky too.
Any questions? And what was your first Friday experience?
When they called me to go interview for the job, seriously, I mean that respectfully. I wasn't necessarily a fan or not. It just wasn't something I was experiencing at the time. I just, you know, when they told me they want me to interview for the job, I went and rented a couple of them, part 4 and part 3, just to get a gauge on what it was all about. Thank goodness Tom McLaughlin said, I don't want to represent the past, I really want to build the future, in so many words. And he gave me some guidelines and boundaries, and I stayed within the boundaries, and I hope we were successful. All right, who else? I know you guys are getting hot, because I'm starting to get hot, and I'm just sitting here. So I feel that body heat. I don't even know what time it is. Anybody know what time it is?
5:27.
Okay, so you guys, if you have any questions, I mean, trying to think if there's anything that y'all might think about or want to ask that, because we get all the questions. The cool thing about the questions, everyone, is I always want to answer the question like it's the first time I've ever heard it, with enthusiasm. Because the questions do come relatively the same from panel to panel. But it's important for us, at least for me, to communicate the excitement of the first kill or the first scene. Again, I always say, for me personally, I appreciate everybody being a fan. I appreciate your support, that y'all keep coming to these shows because they're great. I mean this sincerely. I feel bad about the heat in here because it's hard on all of us. But the fans that are coming in to get the exposure to have a good time, then the AC is broken.
Yeah.
I understand they're working on it, but it's too bad because I've seen some people come in and only make 1 or 2 loops, and they gotta go. It's too hot. And I appreciate it. Look how many people are in this room right now. We're at 5 o'clock, 5:30 into the show closes at 6, and here we're hanging out, sweaty. I mean, I took a lunch break today, and I usually don't take lunch breaks in shows, but I went to my room and took a shower, man. I just need to cool off. It's just like, dang, man. And like I said, I'm 63. I'm an old fart. I'm a senior citizen. I can't be doing this shit, right? Have a little respect for your elders. But guys, I mean this, man. We appreciate it. I mean, if you look around, this is one thing I can tell you about a show. And this is, if you call me on it if you want, but I think you're nuts if you don't agree. This is one thing I'll say. If you look around at the demographics of a show, it's the only place I've ever been in my life, ever, that everybody is unique and different, gets along. I've never, ever had a bad experience at a show with folks not having a good time, or one drunk asshole. Never. I mean, I gotta remember, I run nightclubs, casinos, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I got people that are, I always say it differently, I got people that are purple, green, or blue. I got people that are from Venus, Mars, and Pluto, and they all getting along. You ever notice that? Pretty cool. And you think about it. I know you don't think about it. I think about it because I look at it, again, running clubs and stuff, and casinos, look at inward. I'm like, I mean, red hair. Okay. I mean, when people, I'm looking to see who's in there before I say it, because I want to pick on them if I already picked on them. Well, I already picked on the 2 men up there that are 20. I was trying to hook them up, but I didn't realize they were 20 because there were 15-year-olds in front of my table. I said, how old are you guys? And they're 20. I said, never mind, you can't talk to them. But, those 2 big men back there, I was talking to them. There's another guy that had his hair up on top. I said, you want me to cut that bun for you? I'll give you a haircut. I mean, there's a couple people who got, what do you call those things? Mohawks. And I'm like, did you lose the bet? I mean, so my point is, look around, man. I never had a more fun where you see different folks having a great friggin' time, and everybody's just snap, equal.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not think about it, but I see it just from being older. But I appreciate it, and I know that we as artists appreciate it because we have a good time when we come do these shows. And we get to hear about your, I have people, no exaggeration, 9 years old come up to me, 9 years old, and they're dressed up like Jason. And I have boys and girls come up to me, 9 years old, even a little old but younger, that they know everything about the movie. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. But they're very in tune with what's real and what's not. And I remember one boy who came up sometime in the last year and a half. His goal is to be a director. 12 years old, to be a director of horror movies. And his mom was so supportive. Every time I see him, so how you doing? Oh, I'm doing this project, I'm doing that project. And you just kind of go, oh, these are kind of cool. When you see a young person, there's a young lady that comes to a show, she always dresses up, she's only this big, she always dresses up like Alice Cooper. Got the hat, fake snake around her, eyes done, the leather jacket. One show I did, she came in, she was dressed as one of the guys from Kiss, with the big boots, the guitar. I mean, it's just fun to see, how horror has developed into Comic Cons, and Comic Cons have developed into cons, and you look around and, you got every type of person. I mean, stand up with that blue outfit, you're my hero. What the hell were you thinking? And nobody cares.
He lost the bet.
Yeah, but he lost the bet. You're so mean. He doesn't care. I mean, your wife, right?
Yeah.
Say hi. Raise your hand. I mean, I'm sorry, but she looks like she should be on Gilligan's Island. Seriously, look at that little thing, That's my point, and nobody cares. Everybody happy? Everybody having a good time? Nobody's drunk or based out on drugs in here that I can see, at least I'm not. Unless somebody spiked the water. So listen, I'm just giving you guys, I mean it, I'm 63, I'm an old fart. My kids are 21, 24, and 25, and you know, the two girls are 21 and 24, and when they were little monkeys, yay big, don't tell my boyfriend that you played Jason, because they boys would be terrified to come over, right? And then they come into the family room, there's this Jason mask in there and shit, and you know, shadow box, and of course, what's up with that? Oh, well, gee, gosh. You know, so, I mean, that's just, my son, he's 25, he could care less that I played Jason. Could care less. You know, every once in a while, a friend of his, I heard your dad played Jason. Yeah. He rolls his eyes. You know, he's like 6'4", like a $170 if he's lucky, you know, he's like, you know. But the point is, it's like, he could care less. Now, my 24-year-old, she's cool. 21-year-old, she's real proud of it. And she'll walk around with the little eyes going and stuff, but my boy couldn't give a rat's butt. Could care less. But I will tell you, all the Jasons, for those of you who haven't met Ari, he's amazing. Steve Dash, we lost, of course. Warrington and Steve, they always had their differences. You know, they both worked on the film, to be fair. Steve did all the stunts, and Warrington did some of the things where you see the deformed face. And there's always been a little camaraderie there, or back and forth. And then you look at Richard, who passed away about 5 years ago, and you go right into Ted White, of course, and then 5 is negotiable. Was it Derek? Was it Dick Weed, or was it Tom? Because they both had a feature. And in those days, you had usually somebody doing stunts and somebody doing the front. Well, I was fortunate in mine because I did all my work. There is a scene, just so you guys, and I always give credit, that's not me, the paintball scene. When the paintballs hit the midsection, if you look real closely, you're going to think, oh, he's just wearing a lot of padding. No, it's not me. The gentleman was a little bigger than me, a little thicker. What? Thicker? What are you doing? What is this? You're not a nice person. See what I mean? Thicker. All right? Yeah, I mean, he was a little thicker than I. Don't feel bad for him because he went on to have a great career, from what I understand, directing and some other things. And then everything is me. I always give credit to Christopher Swift in mine. There's a scene where the maggots are around the eyeball. Mm-hmm. That wasn't my, well, the green like me, but Chris was my special effects guy. I was on set, and he threw the makeup on. He did a maggot wrangler and took pictures. That's his eyeball. I always give credit. And then, of course, you got Kane going through. And there's a couple scenes, I think, where Kane didn't do a stunt, I think, but I'm not positive.
In Manhattan.
What's that?
Jason Fix Manhattan.
Yeah. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
See, I'm not, I think. See how I approach this? I want to make sure if I say something, statistically I know I will, but I think. It was part of Manhattan?
Yeah.
So, and then of course, you go into Ken and Derek. And you know, Derek, like I said, it was 09 if I remember correctly.
It was actually Ken who did the stunt.
Was that what it was?
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ken did a stunt for Kane, and then Ken ended up doing part Jason versus Freddy. And for those of you that don't know it, it's true. People do ask me this. How come I didn't do part 7? Good question, right? Well, Kane Hodder will tell you the same thing. Actually, I was slotted for part 7. And they'd already made the decision. Just let's use CJ again physically. Kane is a huge horror fan, huge. And he knew John, the director. And he said it right in panels with me. He went to John and said, I really want to do this character. And John had to go to Paramount for them to approve not using me. Now this is all done behind the scenes. So it's not, and again, I got to be honest, running casino resorts, I'm good. You know, it wasn't one of those, well, God, you know, God bless you. And then when Freddy vs. Jason came out, I got a call, would I be interested, because they wanted a bigger person. And when you run a casino resort, you know, I'm not going to leave for 8 weeks and go do a movie and make, you know, some change, and then I'm unemployed. It takes you a while to get to the top of the train. So I said, thank you for at least even thinking of me. I was honored. But I need to, you know, I'm good right here. You know, I got people dependent on me, and I worked for Coachella. It's a tribe in Coachella Valley. And I had responsibilities to the tribe and to my council and stuff, as monetarily responsibilities. And it just didn't make sense to go do a movie and make $10 basically when I was already making $50 running casinos. Does that make sense? So I elected not to. So I did pass on that too. And like I said, if Tom McLaughlin came back and said, hey, I got a deal with Mr. Miller or Mr. Cunningham, we're gonna move forward, would you entertain? Again, if I could physically deliver to you, I'd entertain it. I don't know if I could. I'm looking, I am 63, I'm in pretty good shape, but that shit kicks your ass. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I'd have to think about it though, but if I couldn't do the right job for the folks standing in front of me or sitting in front of me right now, it wouldn't be worth the $10, to be honest, because I'd let myself down. So, any last questions or anything?
I think I have one last question. Did you and Tom ever bury the hatchet on his very, very hurtful name calling at the end of the movie?
Megan Head?
Yeah.
No, I don't take offense to that.
Harsh.
You guys, it's too personal, man. Yeah. I've said stuff that I didn't mean. You're just being a douchebag at the moment. Megan Head, but I will say at the end of Vengeance, I'm holding a picture of Tom. I don't know if you guys know this. At the end of it, there's a scene of me as Elias sitting in the campfire. And I've got a picture of Tom Jarvis, which is Tom Matthews, and I'm burning it. Jarvis. I'm making a comic Jarvis. You know, because he wasn't in the film, but a girl played his daughter.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where they're coming from on the vengeance piece or bloodline, is that there's still that bad feeling with that. You know, I'll tell you, when I see Tom Matthews out there and others, and I'm just happy to be sitting next to him, signing autographs and having fun. All right, you had one question, sir. We'll shut her down, but I saw your hand go up, sir.
Yeah, I was just curious on how the audition went down and what you think separated yourself from, you know, getting the role versus the people who did not get the role.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've never been asked that, to be quite honest. I don't know the answer, because I wasn't engaged. I didn't know who the competition was.
Oh, you didn't?
I just showed up and met, you know,
Yeah.
everybody, and, you know, Frank Mancuso Jr. Went to his bungalow at Paramount Studios, and for those of you that may or may not know, his father used to run Paramount Studios for buku years. And I didn't even know who, what, you know, I was just, we booked a guy. I said, okay. And unfortunately, like I said, the scene was a little thicker. The scene didn't give them, the first scene that was shot, which was the paintball scene, didn't give them what they were looking for, is what I was told. And they called me on Friday to come back in, and Monday they had me on a plane to Covington, Georgia. And again, the rest is history. And again, I'm very fortunate and blessed that the other person didn't step up to the criteria that was expected. And I was fortunate that I was able to deliver a product. You know, one thing I will tell you about, you know, the industry, I mean, it's interesting. I'm not a real cutthroat person, but it's interesting watching everybody, because you know, a lot of people, it is a real career to them, and it should be, and they work really, really hard. I was just fortunate to do a few things. When I came back, having a SAG card, Screen Actors Guild, I didn't know what that was. Somebody said to me, and I worked for Jackie Collins, Joan Collins' sister, the author. I ran a private nightclub for her in the Beverly Center in Beverly Hills. When I got back, I went back to doing what I knew. And I mean, people like Tom Jones, Stallone, Prince, everybody would come in, you know, Prince, I remember, table 43, red wine. Stallone, table 5 outside, 2 bottles of Crystal, 2 bodyguards. Tom Jones would be at the table or at the bar, and his son would have a couple too many and knock himself out on the concrete, you know, when he hit his head. But it was interesting, because the guy said to me, hey, well, you did what? I go, I did the Friday 13th. You got a SAG card? Yeah. You know, people would cut their arm off for a SAG card, and I was like, okay, I didn't know. So he turned me on to somebody, so I got to do like 4 or 5 national commercials for Cunningham was the agency. And because I didn't know, they'd send me on a commercial call in the daytime. I'm running clubs at night, right? And I get a commercial, be it Gatorade, Colgate, Miller Beer, AT&T, and they'd be sending me these checks. I'm like, this is crazy. But I also knew, to be fair, my big ass, I'm not an oversized person, I'm abstract. He's normal. Well, I'm saying he's normal. I already knew that, you know, Tom Cruise was 5'8". Stallone was barely 5'10" and a half. I mean, the guy would walk by me, you know, to his table. I'm like, a normal sized person. I also knew that my abstract wasn't really what people wanted standing next to them. Dolph is the same size as me. Dolph, I met him at a Monster Mania once, and nice man, same age as me, he's a big man like me, but when you see him standing next to Stallone, there's a reason why he's so big. But he's not, everybody doesn't want that big man standing next to them unless it's for a specific role. So I knew that, so I took the money, threw it in the bank, and ran back to Vegas and started working at one of the casinos and just grew my ranks all the way up to the top to run the joint. That make sense? So I really didn't know. You know, as I say, I look at you, I say, you know, in some cases I was lucky. I mean, I'm pretty good at what I do, but there's some luck involved in anything, doggone it. I don't care what anybody says. There's some great baseball players out there and there's some great leaders out there, and some of them just miss it because of the ramp got pulled up a little faster than expected and you fell in the water. They gave up. So I was just lucky. So, but I'm fortunate. I appreciate being here and talking to you guys, and I appreciate you guys' attention. So, and if there's not anything else, thank you so much, all right?